We have a crowd of people here. We are COVID safe. Welcome. Please give yourselves a round of applause for being here. My name is Jared Walsh. I am going to be taking care of the Members Forum tonight. It's really important we do a welcome to country tonight, of course. We would like to pay our respects and acknowledge the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. A little bit of housekeeping before I introduce the gentleman to my right and indicate what's going on tonight. If you do need to use the bathrooms, they are that way. And I can't stress this enough. If you haven't checked in yet via the COVID Safe app or you've written your details down, please do so. I don't really need to repeat what a crazy year 2020 has been moving into 2021. So the more we can look after one another and be safe, then the more football we will see at Cooper Stadium going into 2021. Because there probably was a time where we thought we may not get to this point where we can have a group of people sitting together, and I don't know about you guys, but I think this year's been a great year of reflection, of understanding what we should be grateful for, and that first game on the 3rd of Jan, we get back to Cooper Stadium. You should probably all take a moment, have a look around and go how lucky we are to have live sport and fans attending as well. And this is what tonight is all about, ladies and gentlemen. You are part of an exclusive group. This is a members-only function tonight, so you're in the inner sanctum, and you guys have provided a handful of questions to ask the key stakeholders and the key people involved in the Adelaide United Football Club, because obviously last year was a bit of a jerk when it comes to everything that was out of our control. What we did on the pitch was satisfying, but I know that there's unfinished business for the players, the staff, the coaches. There's a lot of new faces as well. We're going to find out all about that tonight. First of all, a couple of thank yous. I mentioned you, the members. We have volunteers that don't just happen in A-League football, but all around football South Australia. We have the fans, the players, the staff and the sponsors. Without the ongoing support of our sponsors, whether it's financially or just recommitting for another year, we wouldn't be in a position as a club as we are tonight. So to Flinders University, Starfish, McDonald's, SA Power Networks, and you would have seen UCAN, who are the new apparel sponsors of Adelaide United, with our fantastic new playing and training and outerwear. That is available at the club store now. So, well, not now, don't go across now because it's closed, but it is available at the club store. So if you do want to get kitted out and get ready for the new season, you can do that. The panel of experts and the people we are going to hear from tonight, ladies and gentlemen, can you please put your hands together for Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Nathan Kosmina, our Director of Football, Mr. Bruce Chitte, and our A-League Head Coach, Carl Viet. We do have some other guests in the house tonight, and that is our chairman, Pete Vanderpoel, Stefan Mork, our brand new captain for Adelaide United, Ben Haller and Jordan Elsey, part of the leadership group. We also have our coaching staff as well. Eugene Galakovic is here, Ross Aloisi, we welcome back to the club, and Ayrton Andrioli. Ivan Karlovic is here, the head of women's football, and Phil King, general manager of the Adelaide Entertainment Centre and Cooper Stadium. Apologies from Ian Smith and our W League leadership group, because they are at training at the moment. Just a little bit more housekeeping. So I'm going to ask a few questions. We've collated some of your questions already, if you have sent them to the club, and we will get through as many as possible. I'll do that pretty quickly because I know that you have lots of questions that you want to ask. It is going to be a little bit different though, because we are going to be as COVID safe as we have to be. When we get to the end of the questions and get to yours, we will have someone walking around with a microphone. Please know that we will be wiping that down with sanitizer and wipes. So we are being as COVID safe as possible. It just might take a little bit more time. If you've got a loud voice, fantastic. You can yell it out. That's totally fine. But if you'd prefer to use the microphone, we can walk around. There's a lot of questions to get to, especially regarding something that has happened over the past 24 hours in our football club, and those questions will be answered. But before that, we want to hear about the club mission, vision and values, and there's no better person to tell us that than Mr. Nathan Kosmina, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Jared, and thanks everyone for coming tonight. We had, I think, 3 dates set aside for this forum, and COVID killed 2 of them. Third time lucky, we got it off the ground. So Thank you for coming along. Thank you for adhering to all the COVID protocols. We had to have everyone register individually this year. QR codes are now the norm, so hopefully it was relatively seamless. We thought we'd kickstart tonight with a bit of an overview of the last 9 months, more so from a club culture perspective than the nitty-gritty of the finances or what happened on and off the field. COVID, as we know, was much publicised, caused a lot of challenges for the club and the league. We'll touch on some of those later in the member questions. But more than anything, it actually provided us with some clean air and breathing space to revisit what the club means to the community and who we are as Adelaide United. We've termed this slide redefining Adelaide United's culture. I'm not sure if we're necessarily redefining it, but we're revisiting it because I think it had been forgotten for a long time what it meant to be an Adelaide United stakeholder, being up here in the crowd on the field. And the last 9 months have provided us an opportunity to put that in writing, ask a lot of questions, speak with a lot of people, and hopefully come up with a model and a philosophy and culture that we think can hold the club in good stead moving forward. So I'll go through a few slides with a few pieces of work and outcomes. Much of it we will touch on again when we get to the questions, but if you do note anything, feel free to ask a question later when we start to pass around the mics. So the day for us that really changed everything was 24 March. So I think many of you will probably remember 15 March when we played the last professional sporting game in South Australia pre-COVID on a Sunday afternoon at Cooper Stadium. 24 March, a week or so later, was when the league was officially postponed. So that's where, to be brutally honest, the club and the league went into damage control. We had no idea what the future looked like. The broadcast deal obviously changed dramatically in the months that followed. We made some decisions that weren't easy, but ultimately we've now got through it, and I think we're in a stronger position as a club as a result. But that was really the trigger for revisiting what Adelaide United's culture means. We then embarked on 3 processes which have been really rewarding, I think. We have a lot of people at the club being in the office and also on the field that have been there for a long time. Obviously, Bruce has been a player. Our entire coaching staff, aside from Ayrton, have played for the club. We've got a lot of knowledge in terms of what made this club great and what we need to do to ensure it remains great in the future. It was a 3-part process to understanding what Adelaide United means and what direction we need to head in. We conducted a member survey, I think in the midst of COVID, pretty early on. We met with past players. So Bruce and I sat down with Angelo Costanzo, Marcello Carusca and Travis Dodd, just to get their thoughts on what it meant to be an Adelaide United player. What was the culture like? What was the team like? What were the fans like in those early days? And thirdly, and this wasn't necessarily in our thinking initially, but we ended up embarking on a new head coach recruitment process. With Gurchan leaving at the end of April, we essentially built a whole process around how we were going to recruit the right head coach. And some of those attributes and findings are in these next few slides, and ultimately I think we knew pretty early on who the right person was. He was right under our nose, and we couldn't be happier with the appointment we've made in Carl. So when assessing our culture and what's been working well and what hasn't, we identified a number of problems, to be blunt, areas for improvement that we hadn't been performing as well as we would have liked, and problems that we have since found what we think are the solutions for. For those that have been with us in more recent years, there's been an ever-changing football philosophy and culture within the club. Now, that's nothing against those individual philosophies, but we've been Spanish, we've been German, we've been Dutch, when we haven't been South Australian in a long time. We've had success with all of those. We've won a championship with a Spanish coach, we've won an FA Cup with a German coach, we've won an FA Cup with a Dutch coach. That's not to say any of those philosophies of ways of going about things is wrong, but it's not our way. We need to define what it means to be an Adelaide United player, how we want to play, and what the culture is within the club. Lack of Australian and South Australian coaches. So this isn't me or Bruce or anyone else saying we love Australian coaches. This is evidence-based. Australian coaches are more likely to win the championship. 16 A-League seasons, 13 championships have been won by Australian coaches. Libarski in year 1, Levitska in 09-10, both at Sydney FC, and then Guillermo Moore in 15-16 are the only foreign coaches that have won an A-League championship. Again, that's not to say that a foreign coach isn't the way to go, but evidence would suggest that an Australian coach will, by law of averages, be more successful. For us, I think it's even more so when we start to talk about the culture and parochialism of South Australia and Adelaide United. We have 7 permanent head coaching appointments, only 2 Australians prior to Carl. We had Valkanis in the interim there as well. And obviously, my man was appointed twice and left twice. But only 2 of our 7, which is interesting again for a state with such a proud footballing history and culture, that so often we've looked overseas when potentially, as evidenced by the coaching staff at the moment, I think they've been right under our nose the whole time. Limited legacy planning. We've been very 12-month focused in terms of how do we win the league, but what happens the year after that. Bruce has been quite vocal on that in some of his commentary around youth football and how we need to prepare for the future. Lack of consistency in member communication. So with ever-changing head coaches, we have ever-changing dynamics around what they want to do with the media and what information they want to disclose. For us, it's the club that defines how we communicate with our members. And then we find a coach that aligns with that philosophy. In the last 3 months, or longer really, since the hub, hopefully you've noticed an increased presence in the media. There's more communication going out. We're being more transparent with what we say. It's something that we feel is really important for our members. Again, being a parochial and very strong football culture within South Australia, we need to keep you informed in terms of what's happening. Here's the solutions. Now, we haven't solved all of these yet, but this is what we're working towards. Implement a football philosophy in accordance with the club's find philosophy. So we need to determine how we want to play football and the type of footballers we want to create. So Gerchan and Marco are good examples, completely different footballing philosophies. Both had success. We need to determine now, and we're doing that with, again, a South Australian focused coaching group who have all been at the club previously, to define what our football philosophy is. And we'll touch on that a bit later when Carl starts to speak to some of his thoughts. Foster a club and team culture based on Adelaide United's values. So we've defined 5 values, which we'll go through here, which filter through everything we do. So they go to the players and how they define what they want to do on the park from a cultural perspective, to the office, and hopefully flow on to the members, and most importantly, how we communicate with you. Youth. So we'll touch on that again in more detail, but youth is always going to be a strong focus for the club. We've got a proud history of producing Socceroos. We've got fantastic development pathways in SA. We're always going to need to complement that with interstate and overseas players, but ultimately we always want to be promoting our own first and foremost. Manage short-term outcomes with long-term goals. So the fact that we talk about youth doesn't mean that we're not going to try to win the league. So we need to couple that. It's very easy to have a youth team. Anyone can go pick a youth team. You need to couple that with the right senior players that actually foster their development. Improve engagement with members, fans, media, commercial partners and the South Australian football community, which speaks to tonight, which we hope to do more often. Promote the head coach as the leading ambassador for the club and football in South Australia. There's the right time and place for everyone to be hearing from administrators and Bruce. We've obviously used Bruce very heavily in the media, but ultimately I think it's the head coach that should be the ambassador for our club in the media. When the time's right and there's player recruitment discussions to be had or off-field discussions to be had, it will be Bruce or myself, but ultimately you would have seen that Carl has had a much greater presence in the media than what we've done previously with the head coaches. Foster an inclusive, family-focused club environment. So we've been a little bit, we've lived in pillars a little bit, the club. We've had our W League program sit over here, our youth program here, and our A League program here. We've kind of worked together to a certain degree, but there's never really been any integration. The appointment of Ed Andrioli to a head of youth / A League assistant coach will hopefully bring the youth programs and A League programs much closer together, and appointing Ivan Karlovic as a head of women's football means we're able to dedicate much greater resources to our women's program to have them more ingrained in the day-to-day of the club. That will be evidenced on Saturday, but we'll actually have our A League and W League teams trained together on Cooper Stadium for our fan day, so hopefully everyone can get along to that. So from all this work, Primarily, to be honest, from our member survey, we defined our mission, vision and values. So we thought who better placed to provide us with that commentary than the members. We've got our own thoughts, and I don't think we actually varied much from what the members had said. I think we're all on the same page. We just hadn't documented it, and more importantly, we hadn't lived it before. So we've come up with a mission and vision statement, and then a values that support that. So a quick definition of what a mission is. So essentially it's an organisation's reason for being. Why do we exist is sort of the perennial question that we pose. We exist for the people of South Australia as a custodian for the game of football, and we serve to foster the passion, pride and purpose that football evokes within the community. So we've been conscious there to not define our existence as purely being results orientated. I think results are a byproduct of living this, but as we've seen in the past, results aren't the only metric that define how the success of a football club. A vision statement is an aspirational statement of an idealistic, emotional future of a company or group. So our ambition is to be the most engaged, respected and successful football club in Australia. So the example we give here is those three key terms: engaged, respected and successful. So if we look at our past coaching appointments, I would suggest the most engaged the club's been in terms of with our members and community is under Gombau. Very charismatic, very approachable, very proactive in terms of getting into the community. Respected, I would suggest there was no greater respect for any coach we've had other than Guillermo Moore. I know I was in awe of the guy when I first met him. But through language barriers and others, he wasn't the most engaged coach in terms of he took care of business on the field. But from a media and member perspective, he wasn't that well connected. Success. So the example we use for this is that Marco had a more successful coaching stint in terms of win percentage than Gombau. Under Gombau, our membership was at the highest level it's ever been. I think that success alone does not necessarily dictate success on the park, does not necessarily dictate success off the park. And that's where we need to get these three elements right to ensure the future of the club. The values. So I'll run through these relatively quickly. So ambition, a passion, desire and unwavering commitment to succeed. So ultimately we want to win, and we need to drive that culture within our team. It's all well and good to talk about youth and to talk about family environment, but the team is there to win. So we cannot forget that, and that needs to be at the forefront of how we operate. Integrity, a responsible take with strong moral and ethical principles. Again, this is something that we would see flowing on and off the field within the office. It's an expectation that we behave like this, particularly with our corporate partners as an example. How we deal with our members, customer service on the phone, email, all those sorts of things speak to this point, but also how the boys play on the field. Loyalty, this really speaks to our family values. We need to see it more as an Adelaide United family, being the members. We're all together on this. It's not the members v the club or A-League v W League or office v football. We need to work together as a family to ensure success. Respect, the recognition and appreciation of our history and the experience of others. So that kind of speaks to a little bit of, I think we've forgotten the early days a little bit, and we've probably lost along the way a little bit of respect of the local clubs, as an example. We meet with them or have met with them semi-regularly, but that's something that we're going to do a lot more of, is work with them to help them support their goals. But also engaging with our past players is something that we're working on in terms of formalising some structure around that. Maybe not this year, but in the coming years. Visibility, a commitment to be present in the community and honest in our communication. So again, that speaks to tonight. We don't want to be one of those clubs that goes missing when there's tough topics to address. We've got the number one media operator in that sense. You know, we're not James Troyce, he leaves. We're not ducking and hiding from the media the following day. Bruce fronted up at 11 a.m. and was on the radio this afternoon, and will disclose some more information, regarding it tonight. But we want to be present in terms of you are hearing from us all the time. If you've got questions, we'll answer them. If you email the club, we'll always try to get back to you. I'll ring people semi-regularly, members that have queries. We want to be a club that is committed to their members in terms of their communication. I think that's it. So it's a bit of a background in terms of what a piece of work that we've been doing over the last 9 months. The challenge for the club now is to really live it. And I think stage one of that has been the appointment of Carl and his support staff. Off the field, it will be a journey. COVID has hindered it somewhat, but I think we're on the right path, and hopefully you'll come along with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause, please, for Nathan Kosmina. Can I ask a quick question without notice about what we just saw, Nathan? And ladies and gentlemen, that will be available over the coming weeks as well. Obviously, there's a lot to take in, but it's really important that you are aware of what the club is doing at the moment on and off the field. The thing that stood out for me was the engaged, respected and successful in the vision. And you were saying that the club obviously isn't, football is a results-based business. That's how it's perceived. But do you measure now success differently with what you've just presented to us? If we have a heavily engaged and respected club, that's a lot of success right there straight away before we even step foot onto the pitch.
Yeah, it's hard to clearly define it. I mean, I think a good metric for success in that instance is our average crowds and member numbers, which have obviously been dwindling. I don't think that's necessarily or entirely the club's fault. The live sporting market, I think we probably spoke about it last year in here, has declined in recent years. I think all professional sport in the country's crowds have dropped. And we've also got a stadium which, the term that we often use is beyond its useful life, and we'll talk about some of those upgrades later. But I think the metric for me is probably membership, because if you're successful on the pitch, you should drive membership, but it's a culmination of on-field success and off-field engagement that I think takes you from 8, 9, 10,000 members to the 15, that we'd love to be at.